So our next presenter this morning is Jodee Bock. And Jodee and I have been friends for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, we went to college together just a few years ago. Jodee was doing great things on the basketball court while I was simply trying to run a straight line down the track. So we have a long history together. But you know, it's extra special for me today. We've known each other for a long time, but this is the first time that we've been able to work together. So this is really going to be fun. So Jodee's going to be talking about some of the things that are really foundational to all of us, our personal well-being and our organizational well-being. You know, are we fulfilled? Is our work meaningful? Do we love life? Do we love others? And how can we take the leap to build a more engaged workforce? So let's welcome Jodee Bock.
Thanks, Pete. You know, you sell yourself a little short, Pete. You didn't just try to run a straight line. You were playing football. You were doing all kinds of cool things at Concordia, so don't sell yourself short. Hey, before I get started today, I just want to do a little lay of the land. Heather, you did a great job of telling us that this is a really interesting and different place to present. So I know you're there, my audience. When I look over here, it's because I'm looking at chat, and I'm looking at my slides, and I might be walking around a little bit because I want to get real with you today. I don't want it to be really forced, and it might mean that we alter it a little bit of what we're up to because, to be honest, if we're all honest, we're in really extreme times. Could we say that's true? We're in a lot of chaos in our world, and a lot of us don't know exactly what we're going to come out on the other side of this like. And right now, I see this as a huge opportunity for us to ask and answer some of those questions that might be in the back of our minds, but that we haven't really taken the time to address. And so today we're going to talk about what my mentor, Steve Farber, calls extreme leadership. And if we can agree that extreme times call for extreme measures, then we might find that there are some opportunities for each of us in this time we find ourselves to ask some really important questions. And what I'm knowing for myself and what I'm experiencing for myself is this weird place where I think a lot of people are looking for a place to belong. And when they're in a workplace that honors them, especially now when your workplace could be your office, but it could be your walk-in closet, from what I hear from people who are bringing their work home, wouldn't it be great if we could find a place where we felt like we belonged? Now, I'm going to warn you, I'm an English major, so I might talk about words in a little different way than some people do, but I want to break down that word belong for a second as we get started. You know, the word belong has a couple of contexts. It could be a word of ownership, like this remote belongs to me. Or it could be another way that I want to talk about for a second here, and that's just a longing to be. And if at workplaces, whether remote or traditional, we have this longing to be, wouldn't it be awesome if we could feel that we could be ourselves, that we could be appreciated, that we could be acknowledged? And maybe, dare I say, we could be loved. Can I say that at work? Can you say love and work in the same sentence? There was a time a few years ago when I met Steve Farber, who I'm going to tell you about in a second, that I actually learned about love at work, because he's going to encourage us to take this radical leap into a culture that supports us in our need to belong. And when I first met him, it was this weird concept of being able to say love and work in the same sentence. And in 2004, I wrote a blog. I started my first blog, and I wrote a blog post that said love and work in the same sentence, ? And until 2013, the last time I checked, when I Googled that sentence, my blog post was the only thing that came up. Love, well, okay, there were some things that were inappropriate for the workplace when we talk about love and work. But when I Googled it and looked, nobody was talking about it in this context. So I'm really excited to share with you some ideas about being extreme, whatever that means. Steve tells us that if we're really talking about leadership and we're understanding what that means, it has nothing to do with title, position, how long you've been at a place. Anybody can be a leader. which means that no matter who you are watching this, you have the opportunity to create a workplace that has people belong. And that might include love. So I want to introduce you to Steve. Steve is my mentor, my friend. I've had an opportunity to be certified in his Extreme Leadership program. This picture was taken a couple years ago when, at the beginning of his certification, he has everybody go around for 5 minutes and take as many selfies as you can. He said, let's just get it out of the way right now, let's take a selfie. And so that's my selfie with Steve 2 years ago. And I referenced the 2 years ago mark, even though I've been back since, because after this session in San Diego, he and I got together for coffee so we could talk a little bit more deeply about this whole concept of the radical leap. And what he told me at that coffee meeting was really important to me, and I want to share it with you. He said to me in our conversation, at some point, it makes sense to step back and ask ourselves, what am I learning? Based on everything I've learned and all the work I've done and all the mentors I've had, if I could have everybody get it, what would it be? And if you think about that for yourself, in your workplace, your culture, whatever you call it, what would it be? What is it? I think it's the secret sauce that makes your organization a place where people can't help but be attracted, a place where they feel they can belong. Steve calls that taking the radical leap. So I want to break this down a little bit. We're going to talk about each of these 4 areas today in a little more detail. And I want to invite you during the time I'm speaking with you, because, by the way, I hate speaking at people, and that's what I have to do virtually. I would love it if you would engage. If you have a question, a comment, feel free to put it in the chat. That's why I'm looking over here every now and then to find the chat. If you have a question, please know it's all perfect right now. So, the radical leap. What is that leap? Well, I'm an English major, and I think once an English major, always an English major. I told you I love words. So I'm going to tell you these 4 categories and characteristics with a verb and a noun. Now, don't get freaked out. There will be no math, so don't worry about that. But the first one is to cultivate love. And I'm learning that cultivation is very different than my need to convince somebody of something. If you feel you need to convince someone that you love pizza, or you love them, or you love your dog, that's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about cultivating love. And then we're going to talk about generating energy. We're going to go into inspiring audacity and providing proof. And if we do all of these, we take the leap. And that leap will produce results that I promise you, you won't experience without that leap. So let me break this down a little bit. Steve says that leadership, if we're talking about leadership as not a position, not a title, but a way of being, he believes that leadership creates a culture so vibrant that when people wake up in the morning and think about the imminent day, they won't be overcome with a sense of dread, or won't doubt whether they can survive the day. Has anybody ever felt like that in their place of work? Oh, maybe I'm exposing myself too much because I have. But he says true leadership would then allow people to be filled with the hope and the knowledge that they could bring themselves fully to their roles and do something cool, something significant, and something meaningful. Think about the distinction between those 2 workplaces. The first one, to me, makes me feel heavy. It's like a should. I don't know if any of you remember, I'm going to show my age, Pete, the commercial about Dunkin' Donuts back in the day when the guy would get up at 4 in the morning and he'd say, time to make the donuts. Remember that? That's a culture that feels heavy. But what if there were another option? What if it could feel light? That's what extreme leaders do. So here's how Steve defines extreme leadership. He says, extreme leadership is a wholehearted commitment to making things better, often at the risk of failure and sacrifice. So let me break that down a little bit. Wholehearted, to me, is when your mind and your heart are together. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You could think about this as a relationship and a transaction. We need both in business. That's wholehearted. And then the word commitment. Commitment is doing what you say you will do even when the emotion you set it in wears off. We're lacking commitment in our world these days. So what if we had a wholehearted commitment by anyone, not a leader only in title, to make things better, knowing that it could be at my own risk, my risk of failure and sacrifice. Think about that. Imagine that. Maybe some of you experience that. And if you do, yay, because that's my hope for the world, about the world of work. So, Steve also shares with us a quote that I love from Carly Fiorina when she was doing a commencement address back in 2000. She said, "A leader's greatest obligation is to make possible an environment where people can aspire to change the world." Again, let me break that down. A leader's greatest obligation, not responsibility, not even opportunity. It's obligation. A leader's greatest obligation to make possible an environment, not to make it happen, but to make it possible where people there can aspire to change the world. Not that they have to change the world, but what if there were a possibility where I as an employee, I as a contributor, had that possibility and that opportunity? To me, that's a super great culture. And that starts with cultivating love. Now, don't get freaked out about this whole concept of love. I was told by one of my former bosses that, "Jodee, what you do is touchy-feely crap that makes me puke." Thank you very much. And I had to decide, is this worth staying at this organization if that's how my boss feels about me? Or can I go somewhere where I can believe that it's possible and necessary to cultivate love, which is why I started my own company. So let's talk about love. Let's talk about this concept. And maybe the best way to talk about love at work is to talk about what it's not. Love at work is not fear. Most of us understand how to lead with fear and how we've been led with fear. Fear is what will happen if I don't hit my quotas, what if I don't make my goals, and then we show up at work walking on eggshells and worrying about the other shoe dropping behind us. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a culture of love. Love is the opportunity to change the world for the better. This is a poster I have in my home office, signed by Steve and given to me by Steve, and this is kind of his motto. He says we need to do what we love in the service of people who love what we do. Imagine that as a way of showing up at work. It is possible. That's love. So, any questions about love? I live in the land of Minnesota, North Dakota, nice. How do the terms love and work fly in workplaces here? Here in North Dakota, it's easier to feel love, I think, because we have the opportunity to see our people. We only have, I don't know, what is the number these days? 780,000 people in our state? Chances are good that we're related to somebody in our state. And the love concept in work is a little bit easier when we have the opportunity to know each other. Yet you first have to love yourself when you think about that. That's a whole other conversation we can have at some time. But that's what it means to me to bring love to work. Remember, this is an overview of a whole day program, and I could get all caught up in this concept of love because it's so important to me, but I'm going to move on to energy. So let's talk about energy. One of my first jobs was at Cass County Electric Cooperative, where we provided energy. But I couldn't sell energy because I'd kill people. I mean, like, you can't touch energy, right? You can't touch electricity, but you can feel it. You can feel energy. And you know when you walk into a room that has a whole lot of energy and it feels great, and you also know when you walk into a room that feels like somebody just got in trouble. That's the kind of energy I mean, and that is possible to create. So let's break this word down, energy. The dictionary definition says it is an internal or inherent power. That means it's inside of me. Capacity of acting, operating, or producing an effect. First definition. Second, strength of expression, force of utterance, power to impress the mind and arouse the feelings, life, spirit. I grew up in a Class B, North Dakota town, where we did that cheer at basketball games. We got spirit. Yes, we do. We got spirit. How about you? Did you guys do that? I hope you did. That's the kind of spirit I'm talking about. That's the kind of energy I'm talking about at work. That is definitely possible. Steve says the extreme leader is a generator, a powerful force for action, for progress, and an enthusiastic believer in people and their capacity to do the awesome. Think about what you could do for the people around you if you just decided to become an extreme leader by that definition. An enthusiastic believer in people and their capacity to do the awesome. That's energy. This is my favorite one. Inspire audacity. Let me break this down for you. This is audacity according to Steve. He says audacity is a bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints. Woohoo, no rules. Yes! Bold and blatant disregard. Wait, it doesn't stop there. That would be chaos for sure. You'll notice there are 3 dots. In order to change the world for the better. A bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints in order to change the world for the better. Well, how do you think you can be so audacious to do that? That idea you have, that innovation you have, who do you think you are? Has anybody heard that before? You are an extreme leader if you believe that your audacious ideas can be possible in the world. That's audacity. Now, I don't know, Pete, do you remember the skeleton? Do you remember that? I do. In the Olympics? Yes. So the skeleton, Jimmy Shea, 2002, he actually brought it back. His grandpa did the skeleton in, the 40s. But he actually, in 2002, was the first American to do the skeleton. You're on your stomach, going face first down the mountain.
Wow.
Now, any idea, Pete, what he might have said halfway down the mountain?
Yeah.
Sure. That's it. That. Oh, can't you imagine? You get halfway down the mountain. He was actually interviewed by Steve for this book, and he asked Jimmy Shea that very thing. And he said, Jimmy, what were you thinking halfway down the mountain? And he said, I was thinking I must be stupid for doing this. But he actually said, oh, the S word. And then he said, I got to the bottom of the mountain, and I said, when can I do it again? That's extreme sports. What if we thought of our leadership opportunity that way? We'd have to be willing to have that moment in the middle of the mountain when we're going, oh, what have I done? But if we do that, we are demonstrating love, really, and energy. So Steve calls this the OSM, the O moment. It's actually a term he uses. And he says, if you remember, a leader's greatest obligation is to make possible an environment where people can aspire to change the world. Wouldn't you suppose you'd have a few OSMs as a leader if you allowed your people to do that? I've heard stories about companies like Southwest Airlines, a story in particular about a guy who had an idea. I don't know the exact details, but something about putting freight on planes that weren't full. This is several years ago. And then allowing the planes to bring the freight. And it would save the company money, and it would do all these things. And he had this great idea. And his boss said, okay, let's do it. Well, he did it, and it ended up costing the company $1 million. It didn't work. So his boss said, I need to call you into my office. Come in, we have to have a conversation about this. And the guy came into the office fully expecting that he was going to be fired, right? And the boss said, fire you? I just spent $1 million on you. I'm not going to fire you. We got to figure this thing out. That's an OSM. When you have an idea that bold and blatant, it could completely fail at the risk of my success. But if I'm not willing to do that, if I'm not willing to play at that level, then I'm not really being extreme. And I'm not really allowing the people around me, whether they're people I supervise or people I'm a coworker of, to play to that level. And then we only live up to the expectations we have for each other and in each other, which are probably the same today as they were yesterday. And right now, in these extreme chaotic times we have, if we come out of whatever happens after this pandemic the same as what we went in as leaders, we've wasted it. This is extreme. What can we do differently? How can we be audacious and be bold and blatant in our disregard for the constraints that normally have kept us stuck, now to get into a new possibility for ourselves and the people we lead? So that's the OSM. Now keep in mind, there's a little W world where I say, I want to change the world. There's a little W world, which is maybe my family, my community, my company. I can change the world for the better. It doesn't always have to mean the whole wide world, although it could. Don't you suppose there were people who said, I have this idea that I need to bring to the whole wide world? Don't get freaked out if you think, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, who do I think I am? Change your little W world, and it will automatically change the big W world, because we're all connected. So be aware without having to beware. Does that make sense? Be aware of the possibilities without always looking at beware. What will happen if I do? What will happen if I don't? That's not being extreme. That's playing it safe. And right now, in our workplaces, this is the time we really need to consider playing bigger. And that's changing the whole wide world. So the last part of the LEAP acronym is providing proof. This is the area that very few people relish and embrace because it's accountability. People want the freedom to be whoever they are in their workplaces, but they're not always willing to take on the accountability for it. So proof is providing proof that what you're doing is on purpose. And when you provide proof, you do that to yourself. You prove it to yourself. And you can do that in a lot of ways. You can get a mastermind group around you. You can have people who support you and who you're becoming, not who you've been being. And that allows you to prove this to yourself. You can also then prove it to others. Now, it doesn't matter if you sit in your home office and go, I'm the best in the world, and you're in your home office without anybody there with you. You're not on Zoom, you're not doing anything. It's a start, but you need to prove it to others. And it's not just talking a good talk. Talk is cheap. And if you become a big talker, people might stop believing in you if you're not willing to prove it to others. But the most important part of this is you need to prove it to others that you're proving it to yourself. And that's where true accountability comes into play. What are you willing to do? Willing. That's a big one. When you're willing to do whatever it takes without violating the rights of others, that's where the little W world will start to shift around you, and eventually the big W world will as well. That's the proof piece. Please don't be scared by accountability. It's what all of us need with each other, not to each other. There's a difference. If I can be accountable with you, it feels a lot less heavy than if I feel I need to be accountable to you. What if, as leaders, we had a different way of having those conversations about what we're really willing to do and what our burning desires are for our workplaces? So that's the leap. And I want to share with you a video. I'm going to look at the chat first. You guys are great. I'm actually looking at the chat because it feels good, because you guys are saying good things. This is awesome. Time of COVID. Okay, how is this time of COVID an opportunity to take our leadership to the extreme? Jenny, thank you for that question. That's awesome. Now is especially a great time. There are so many resources online. Since everybody's online right now, everybody's level. There's level playing fields. I'm taking 3 classes right now online that I never would have had access to before, and they're very affordable online right now. because people are trying to get the activity up. So now in the time of COVID, go find a class you want to take. Go find something that you want to learn about yourself. Maybe it's a limiting belief you have that you haven't really addressed, something that's an untrue core belief that's been keeping you stuck. And then do something about that. Find a resource, and I'd be happy to provide some of that for you. So Jenny, thank you for that question. As I wrap up, I want to share with you my mentor, Steve. Actually, Steve Farber himself. And he will tell us a little bit about some opportunities to move from theory to actually taking the leap and taking new action. So here's Steve.
In describing extreme leadership, I use a lot of words that have been traditionally written off as soft, squishy, kumbaya stuff by people who think of themselves as hardcore, no-nonsense business types. But it doesn't bother me because, frankly, the sun is setting on those folks. All you have to do is look at the economy in the wake of Enron, Anderson, WorldCom, Imclone, Tyco, remember them? Followed by the Madoff debacle, the subprime blow-up, the Wall Street meltdown. All you had to do was watch your 401k and mortgage evaporate along with your retirement dreams, and it should be glaringly obvious that trust and love and values are anything but touchy-feely. Now, even average people on the street know that integrity, they know this, they know that integrity and their bank accounts are intimately connected because they've experienced it the hard way. Trust and love and humanity are hardcore business principles. Well, how about that? And understand this, it's time for us to step up as extreme leaders. Thankfully, the term corporate social responsibility has become the buzzword du jour. So let's take ourselves at our word. Let's make this a new era of love-inspired audacity, and let's set an example of what's right in business and everywhere else. We have to be audacious enough to follow the examples we respect and challenge the ones that we don't. Do you agree? Then I say that the world needs you right now. It needs your influence and your audacious action, and your actions will require you to find strength in your heart. Never let anyone tell you that your heart's not big enough, and don't believe the hype that this world is controlled by a select few. Nobody controls your world unless you choose to let them. This is the time to shift the image, the behavior, and ultimately the legacy of business, and you do that through your own behavior and your own example. Now, you may not think that you can change the whole world that we live in, and you may be wrong, but you can certainly change the world, small w, that you and yours live in, the world of your company, the world of your employees, the world of your industry, the world of your family. To deny that is to deny your capability as a human being and your responsibility as an extreme leader. And that ain't no kumbaya.
That ain't no kumbaya. This is not touchy-feely crap that needs to make you puke. I'm telling you, former boss, and everyone else, this is the time. It's now to be extreme, and don't be afraid of the word extreme. It's time to take that leap. And if you don't, you'll have regrets for what you didn't do. If you're audacious enough to do something, you at least, if you have to have regrets, they will be for things you did and not for things you wish you had done. So find someone, find something, reach out to me. I would love to connect you with resources to allow you this opportunity to play big and be extreme. I'm excited for the future we're living into and what we will be creating, even if we don't know exactly what that looks like right now. The time is now. You belong here. Thanks, everybody. And it's now my pleasure to send it back to Pete.
Hey, another great pass, Jodee. Wonderful. Don't wait.
I never passed, though. That was an assist. I always got the assists. I always scored. I'm sorry, that's my one assist ever.
Whatever it was perfect. Thank you. Let's don't wait another 35 years to work together, Jodee, okay? Promise? All right, I am ready to take the leap, absolutely. And thanks for such great tips about talking about leadership to make us all a better leader. We're really starting to realize the importance of leadership and leaders and bosses in your team's well-being. So this message is absolutely perfect. And I think we would also agree that all of our workplaces could use a little more love. So I loved your message there. All right, we're going to take a few minutes to get Nicole and Curtis set up. So we're going to take another trip to Keith's trailer to enjoy some more original music. So take it away, Keith.
Hey guys, it's Keith Axman again. I'm going to do one more song for you. This is one I wrote for a competition I was in a few years back. It's the True Value Jimmy Dean Country Showdown up in the Iron Range area of Minnesota. It did pretty well. Obviously, I'm here in my trailer and not on stage, so you know how well it did. But the band that backed me for the competition started using it in their rotation, so that's kind of cool. But this one's called Value of Love. I woke up from a bad dream. I was standing on a ledge, looking down into the valley. Lord, how about trade, baby, falling down into the valley of love. It happened once to my best friend. China was his name. He slipped and fell into the valley, and now the was insane. He fell on down into the valley of love. Well, there's nothing you can do when it happens to you. It's rolling like a freight train breaking on through. There ain't no way your heart can stop this ride. Falling on into the valley of love tonight. Some will tell you it's a good thing. It'll put your heart to the test. But watch your step, cause if you lose your ground, there ain't no way you'll last if you fall on down into the valley of love. But I always said I'd be a free man. Falling in love was never in my plan. But then it happened to me. I fell on down into the valley of love. Well, there's nothing you can do when it happens to you. It's going like a freight train breaking on through. There ain't no way your heart can stop this ride. Falling on into the valley of love tonight. Yeah, falling on into the valley of love tonight. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you, Keith. Man, I could listen to him all morning. If you're interested in hearing more of Keith's music, just Google Keith Axman, and you'll find some of his music out there on the internet.